Hello, and welcome to the podcast here. Thanks for joining. Appreciate all you folks hopping on and listening. As always, I'm joined by my brother James Sheehan. I'm Bernard Sheehan, and we're the authors of Hard Border. Appreciate everybody hopping on here, for this. Today, we're again in a spirit of trying to keep things light, focus a little bit less on some of the politics in Ireland, and talk about, as we're going into the summer season, talk a little bit of golf here. We've seen some tournaments being played already. We've got two majors under our belts with the Masters and the PGA Championship, which is now kind of earlier on in the season. And there was a little drama a couple weeks ago with one of our fellow Irish guys, Rory McIlroy, essentially announcing that he and his wife of a couple of years are calling it quits. So thought we'd talk about that a little bit and dive in from there. Kind of an interesting story, Jay, with him especially because he had left his previous fiance for his wife, and now they're not making it either. So it's interesting to kind of see, like, I guess it's these sports guys traveling. It's a lot of pressure, but it seemed like that was pretty good to go. So it's interesting to kind of see this happening more and more. Some of these blondes definitely don't make it to the end, but it's unusual to see divorce in general, but I guess not from a sports figure.
No, I'd agree with that, and particularly this character, and not to harp on the Irish, but Rory McIlroy, unfortunately, is not the probably greatest personality to be married to. But before I dive into that, I just want to congratulate you, Bern. We just published our 25th episode, so we're the 1% of podcasters that keep on going. So congratulations, anyways, and we'll keep at it. But with regards to Roy McIlroy, it's not. So I have had the pleasure, not really, kind of. We met. Or we didn't even meet. We bumped into each other in the corridor of the Four Courts in Ireland when I was through my court days in Ireland, and I think his manager was suing him for about 30 million euros because I think he was being reneging on some of that Nike money he got after he won his big tournament. Nike signed him to like $100 million plus deal, or maybe $200 or $300 million deal, and they wanted it. They were entitled to 10% or some percentage of that, and I think he settled out of court, of course, because that's where we bumped into, where they're in the Four Courts and kind of the side building. There's kind of where it's arbitration, kind of these little glass, they're almost like office conference rooms, little conference rooms. And you go back and forth between two conference rooms for the other side. And so, I saw him there as well. And we were just up, and of course, the press were all outside for him. Blah, blah, blah. But it was interesting. But I just don't think my understanding, I wasn't really ever a big fan of Rory McIlroy. I just like good personalities, should I say. And from my understanding, he just isn't a good personality of how, he came up young. He didn't treat the press well. He was kind of maybe a little bit more like Tiger Woods. And I don't think that really, I don't think that, you can change those stripes, really. So, but I think even as you said, his first girlfriend, or his first fiance, he broke up with her the day after they send out the wedding invitations.
Right, something like that. And then
like that. Crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
And you think you're going to do it before the wedding invitations, and then apparently it's almost like he ghosted her, where he just called her and it's like, yeah, we're not going to go ahead with it, and then he's just done. So that's the type of guy you're dealing with. So I don't think he's probably the greatest personality to be married to be honest with you.
Yeah, and like you said, he was a young phenom in his day, so he's probably one of those guys who thinks, hey, I'm the bee's knees, and you just feel that nothing you can do is wrong. But still, I guess on the flip side of that, I'm kind of a big proponent of, let's call off a wedding even at the last second rather than going through with it for the afters or the party or whatever, and just calling it up until that point rather than get married and then get annulled the next couple days or something like that. So timing wasn't great, but also the way you do it is to be respectful of the other person and try not to embarrass them on the world stage, sort of thing. And it's bad enough with family and everything else. I'm sure she's getting a good laugh now, seeing that her replacement didn't make it.
No, I would agree with that. Of course, they had a nice prenup. So going into a marriage with a prenup, I don't really know, whether that's a good idea in this day and age. But I mean, it does set the stage for a divorce down the road. But that is the news coming out. But of course, all the news is that he is romantically possibly linked to a CBS reporter now on the tour.
Okay.
Uh, so this girl who was married to maybe an NFL quarterback, they got married in 2022, so less than 2 years ago, of course. So she's spotted without her ring, and Roy's doing some promos for her charity for dogs on golf courses or something like that. And, so apparently, they don't move on until they've moved on, so to speak, possibly. But I mean, that lifestyle, I mean, you're traveling what, half the year, more than half the year. I mean, a lot of every week, different place, and you got a lot of cash. You got, for whatever it's worth. So it's interesting. But that's the rumor on the tour, anyways, from my brief YouTube research that I did today on him. That he's romantically linked to the CBS reporter called Amanda Balanes or something like that.
Okay.
And apparently she's got a pretty sweet gig. She does the NFL, she does college football, and she does this. And young girl, personally, I think the wife is prettier than her, but apparently she's spotted without her ring after just 2 years of marriage. So I guess marriage just isn't as valued on the circuit if you got tons of cash,
Well,
traveling around.
that's exactly it. It's a circus, right? You're going from town to town, and maybe that's the person who's something of a stable person on the road for you. But what happens a lot with guys, and it's not necessarily laudable, of course, but they do trade down. They'll go down to like a girl who's not as pretty for other reasons. So it's it's a tale as old as time. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to kind of see this happening, but it's can't be that unusual unless you're traveling with your spouse kind of from time to time, from city to city and course to course. And that's part of your family lifestyle. Otherwise, you're going to be on your own and get into all kinds of mischief.
100%. I think Tom Hanks travels with his wife. Not to say that it's any different, but I mean, you do feel sorry for kind of for the sporting guys with the cash that kind of girls are throwing themselves at you, and it's pretty hard, I would say, with kind of being on the road, et cetera, so forth, to have that. But my dad always used to say, because he was a doctor in a hospital, and the doctors would always kind of trade down. He said he was kind of funny because I guess they just got bored.
Right.
And a nurse would kind of bat their eyes at them, and then next thing they're kind of, in a hotel room. The wife's kicked them out. They have a quasi girlfriend that a nurse that might be pregnant, and then they marry him, and then they're divorced a couple years later. It's kind of pretty crazy, but I think that's how the divorce situation works. It's kind of you marry the next one, and either you don't make it or there's another girl next, which Rory that's probably his signature. There's just another girl next after this one,
Well, and that's also a stereotype too with nurses and doctors. I mean, you think about it, they're locked in the building together. They're walking around in pajamas all day long, and there's beds everywhere. I mean, sorry, that you've got an environment where it's not necessarily conducive to people, being respectful of their home life and their families and things like that, rather than playing around. So it's
the women are caregivers in the hospital,
yeah.
and they don't mind if they're young, and they go after the good-looking doctor and
who are making dough.
Well, yeah, making dough, and then they're living in a Grey's Anatomy world, which they love, if they're any sort of millennial or whatever. I mean, apparently that show's just crazily popular, still going on 14, 15 seasons. But sidetracking that, you could just see that, these sort of guys, I mean, you do give a round of applause to people that can, have a strong marriage during those type of situations, because it sounds pretty crazy, living in a hotel room,
Definitely. Exactly. So, again, we talked about Rory. He was a phenom. He started really winning and making a mark for himself going back to when he was like 16, 17, and really just winning and being, something of an Irish figure, out there, who's just like, here's this kid really coming up, and he's probably going to do something on the international stage. And one of the main, or kind of quote unquote amateur competitions that he won is called the Scratch Cup, and that's in Mullingar and Westmead, and that's kind of like a course slash if you like, championship that we're familiar with. And I think he won that at 17. And that was always kind of a big one in our lives, necessarily at that course. It's not one of these famous courses necessarily, but it's really nice. It's very green. It's an older club that's been around forever. And it's, you see a lot of that in Ireland with these clubs where they also have like the teams and they're going up against each other. And it's really a great golf culture, or it was, from our perspective, growing up, that you had the opportunity to really build and be a part of those clubs. And there's incredible courses throughout the country.
No, 100%. And Mullingar, just for our family's from Mullingar, but Mullingar is definitely, the Scratch Cup is kind of the stepping stone for the Irish amateur to go pro. If they win it, that's kind of their next step.
Yep.
But you kind of, you do got to give your hats off to the people in Ireland that become professional golfers, because it's a hard slog learning golf in Ireland. I mean, as we know, growing up there every summer, we were carried off there. We played golf and it was always raining. And it's a lousy round of golf.
Yeah, it is.
But you learn to kind of battle the elements. But I mean, to be very good, you're going to be playing and do that night and day. And, now he's living the life down in Florida, like all good golfers are, and having the suntan. But growing up in Ireland, learning, to be that level of, good is pretty incredible. I mean, I don't know if you saw this Netflix documentary called Swing, I think it is. It's about the NBA, the PGA. It's kind of like similar to, the Formula One.
Drive to Survive.
Yeah, which is awesome.
Yeah,
this one's really good too. And so he's almost, they go through like Jordan Spieth and stuff, who's I really like. I like those guys. And and then he's kind of the last character, but he won like the FedEx Cup like 2 years ago, which is like, 15 mil they give him for that. But he was kind of like almost the pinnacle of that, because Tiger wouldn't do that thing. So he was they ended on him, and miraculously I guess maybe because he won the FedEx, but I mean, it really seemed like it was centered around him, particularly of all the golfers, Yeah. And I think he was even on like the board of the PGA on behalf of the players. Because as you probably know, a lot of golfers went to this new league called Live, which is run by the Saudi Arabians and Greg Norman, and they're paying a bucket load of money. And he was on the, I think him and Tiger were very much pro PGA, keep the tradition, why are we having another one? But I guess when they kind of were going to merge, PGA is like, well, we can't do anything. We're a monopoly effectively. We'll merge with these. And Rory and particularly, it's like, well, they were going to offer me 350 mil. So where's my money? Do you know what I mean? So
that's right.
Apparently he resigned from the board immediately and went across the street to start negotiating with them, But I don't think he got much anywhere because they had already spent their cash or something to that degree, It's like, yeah, we'll merge with PGA, but we're not doling out any more big contracts, Phil Mickelson and a few others kind of gobbled that up. Like, you kind of had your chance, something along that line. But so it seems like he's very much still on the top of the board for the golfers, which is good from an Irish standpoint. It's good to see a world stage Conor McGregor type athlete, or if you call golf a sport, I kind of more or less call it a game. But
it's a game.
Yeah, it's a game. Well, they'll say it's a sport because you got to work out and blah blah blah, but it really is just a technical game, it feels like.
Well, and that's kind of a road we could go down to, because I think if you grew up in Texas, which is also a huge golf area, I think it can borderline on a sport because you're playing in horrible conditions, just like you kind of the flip side of Ireland, where you're playing in the heat and the dust and you're barely able to stand. And I also feel and I think the golfers have talked about it, that Tiger has really changed things over the last 30 years now that he's been playing, of athleticism and being in shape. And, you you don't drink and all this other stuff. You're not smoking, because that's the thing. Like these older guys, they used to get what they called the yips, which is like when they were putting, they were shaking. And the only reason they had those is because they were all alcoholics. That was what gave you the yips. And that's basically something that's gone now. That's because
Going back to the clubhouse and having a few pints or
Yep.
more after the round.
And now you go back and you work out, or you hit more balls. So there is that level of athleticism, again, after seeing Tiger and everything else. But you're right. Growing up in Ireland, it is tough to play there with the weathers. But I think that's also kind of makes you good. And it's a different approach than we have in the U.S., where it's a lot of practice and very little playing. Over there, it's a lot of playing and not as much practice or hitting balls, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, because you can get on courses pretty cheap back in the day where you're not dropping, hundreds of dollars in the US for on average, or $50, If there's more memberships, and it wasn't 50 grand membership for dad who worked at, General Motors or something that got it with his perks. It was like, everybody could join up for a membership for like $100 and play as much as they could, and be on the teams and stuff like that. So there's a lot better opportunities for like the younger ones to play if parents couldn't afford the big time memberships, which the American ones just sound like they're still pretty crazy, to bring the guys out to golfing. But just to touch on Tiger Woods, because the athleticism of him, I mean, they would say that actually because he went almost too far, because he used to live in like Jupiter Island, Florida, and he would be like next door neighbors to like Ken Griffey Jr., the baseball guy. And they would all, and like even Shaq and a few others, and they would always play like pickup games and stuff like that. So, I mean, they were super fit, and Tiger was like a skinny little, kid, so to speak. So I think he kind of got into that, but then he got addicted and like, who knows what substances he was taking, not to say any were illegal, but, he kind of was doing like, Navy SEAL training on off season and stuff like that, like serious naval, and they're just like, you can't survive that. Like you're going to be broken down. This is not what your game is. Like, other guys the baseball guys need to bulk up for the big bat. And, so it's kind of like they're kind of saying it ruined him effectively.
Interesting.
But, I mean, he's still out there regardless how many car accidents he gets into or whatever he's doing. But yeah, so it seems like still Rory McIlroy is kind of still at the top of the leaderboard. He's kind of still doing very well. He says he's having a good year. And he won, I think he divorced his wife the next day after he won his last tournament. And but he's just, he wouldn't be my top guy from a personality standpoint. So I wish the luck to any girl that wants to take him on, even if he does come with hundreds of millions of dollars,
Well, that's any pro athlete too. I mean, there's always going to be those downsides of them traveling and the temptations that come along with that. And I'm sure they're all lining up. There's plenty of them without a doubt.
Exactly. Even just for the lifestyle,
Yep. But back to golf in Ireland there. I mean, we talked about Mullingar. I know you've played some of the premier courses over there. Do you have like a top 5 or something like that you look at from your experience? Or are you just like, this one is far and away the best one that you've played in Ireland? Or what are your thoughts? I know you probably played.
So in south of Cork, there's called the Old Head of Kinsale. It's a private one owned by a guy, and that's kind of considered almost the best in the world. I mean, within reason. It was I think it's a cool like $1,000 for a 4-ball. So that's $250 a round. Now I know that's back in my day that was a lot. But I got for free. I wouldn't pay $250.
Is that
euro? Sorry, that's €250 a round.
Okay, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So I got it. I knew the lawyer to the guy. He brought me around. It was great. But otherwise, I'd be going down to Tralee, which Tralee, I think, is still the best golf course in Ireland. It's not being just kind of biased. It's an amazing course. Michael, like it's just, and that was one for about $140 a round last time I checked. We're lifetime members, but we got in cheap when it was just like a couple years old. So they needed investors to get it going.
Right.
So mom and dad bought us a few, lifetime memberships for practically nothing. But I mean, these are like, this is, Tralee's, even Michael Jordan, said on the Jay Leno show, I think he mentioned Tralee was his favorite golf course in Ireland,
Interesting.
by sure, but the links, it's not good for tournaments because it's on the cliffs. It's
Right.
like, if anybody's ever seen the British Open, it's kind of very deep rough. It's a links course. Particularly Tralee, you can't have spectators there. They'll fall off the cliff. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's
Yeah.
just, there's no way. So Ballybunion is kind of its twin brother, which is much probably more well known.
It is
And
for
they
sure.
even have a statue of Bill Clinton there, I think, which is kind of odd. But that's probably about 40 minutes away from Tralee, and that's a little bit more conducive for crowds. So it kind of had a better well name because of they had some tournaments there, even maybe the Irish Open or something like that, which is kind of the precursor to the English Open. There would
Hmm.
always be like the next weekend to just get people practicing. But Tiger Woods would always come between Tralee and particularly Ballybunion with I think his name was Mark O'Mara, and
Yes.
they would always come, and that was like to practice before the English, um, the whatever
The
that
British
tournament is.
Open or the Open
The British
Championship, as
Open.
they call it
Yeah,
now.
sorry, the British Open. Is that what it is? The Open Championship is.
Is
Wow.
the
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they like when I was growing up. It was always the British Open, and
Of course.
but then they change, or like the official name is the Open Championship, because that's like the beginning of golf and all of that good stuff. So then the Americans started calling that the Open Championship, and then just defaulting like ours is still the U.S. Open, because that was always the back and forth, the British Open, the U.S. Open. But as you say, like they play the Irish Open first and kind of get that feel for the links courses, which I'm sorry, they are tough. The links courses are really borderline unfair because if you go a little bit off the fairway, you're not only going to have a tough shot, you're probably going to lose your ball. And that's really,
Easy.
for your like average player out there, it's really, it's not fun. And I know it's tough. It's meant to be tough. Almost the way Augusta is tough. Like their greens are like supposed to be impossible, but I also think the links greens are just as difficult. Or I've never been to Augusta, so I can't say they're just as difficult, but I think they're very fast, and that's tough on your average player. But they're the sights are pretty good if you can find your ball. It's really breathtaking
Amazing.
to look out on the ocean and see the beaches and everything, and the sand hills are really cool, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And you talk about Tralee, that was designed by Arnold Palmer, and I think that was the first one he did in Europe, and so that was kind of like is like a big deal to them.
Yeah, it's an amazing course, and there's castles on the course, like these little castle lookouts, and but you're absolutely right. Like it is an aerial target game, and that's, I mean, I kind of think now because I mean I don't play golf anymore, but if I do go play golf with the lads with, I'm still drinking beers on the course, but I'm still hitting 16 to 18 easy.
Yeah.
Like it's, and I haven't played in 3 or 4 years, and I'll roll out. Now I may have the first 3 holes are crap, and but I'm counting every stroke. But by the end of it, I'm getting a few pars here and there, maybe a birdie, and I'm hitting 18 pretty consistently. And it's kind of funny because when I do go play and I put 18 and everybody, I hit a few good shots and they're just like, oh, we got a ringer. And it's just like, no, mates, it averages out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I might get a par, a
Definitely.
birdie here and there, but don't worry, you missed the triple bogey back there. But I would
Right.
rather take trees over the links courses any day of the week because at least you do find your ball, and that's why like the Irish Open and all these ones now in Ireland are kind of using what's called like the K Club or Dare Manor now kind of redid its course,
Yes.
and kind of lengthened in and got it ready, which I think they're looking for the Ryder Cup. We mentioned it in a previous episode, number 4 or 5 or 6 or something like that. But they got some road works they got to do to kind of make sure it happens for them. But he pretty much redid the course, but those are all like non-links, normal courses, with the trees and lovely and great and
Beautiful. Yeah.
picturesque. And they get all the celebrities there. I think Mark Wahlberg was there a couple months ago, because it has that 5 or 8 star hotel on the grounds now that they completely redid. And, it's all good. But I mean, again, kind of an American owned the Adair Manor before this is where we say one of the oligarchs bought it, and of course the banks collapsed him. Took
Sure.
his hotel off of him, and then sold it to the oligarch down the street, and he put probably 100 mil into it or something like that. So it's ready to play, and that's the same with the K Club, owned by another oligarch in Ireland, just outside Dublin. And I think they just had to sell it now because he was doing some crazy stuff in the hotel, shall we say?
Oh boy. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that he ran out of money. It was something like they were doing some funny stuff, and he's just something happened where it's just like, we better sell this thing. And he was like old guy. His name was Smurfit. It's kind of
Right.
it's one of these guys. He's like Dr. Jill Biden. So he's just to give you a sample of the oligarchs. Almost all the oligarchs in Ireland are non-educated, didn't go to college, game the system. This guy's no different. Came out of high school. His dad owned like a box company, small time. He grew it. So of course they gave him like a honorary PhD for it, like maybe let's say 40 years later, right? So he's like 60. He literally commanded everybody to call him doctor.
Okay.
After
he got the honorary.
Yeah, when I saw him on the rich list when I was maybe, I don't know, 15 years old, who's this doctor guy? And it was like, oh, he must have went to med school. Like, oh, was he in my uncle's class, because they were, and it's just like, no, he got an honorary degree, like the 5 that Oprah has or whatever. And then it even goes a step further. So he would then have like the only yacht in Ireland. Like, let's say he was the top 3 oligarchs in the time, and he would have like one of the big yachts, and he'd bring people out for like cruises for like a week or something like that. And he made everybody call him captain on the cruise, like no joke. Even though he wasn't sailing at all, he would go around with the captain's hat and the thing. And if he wasn't named doctor, he would be called captain.
Oh my
and it was
gosh.
just like, these are crazy. And then like it's not like, so all the kids are crazy, and I mean to a degree. And so anyways, he they own the big box company. Apparently they probably did very well. I think the nephew took it over, her son or something, and because of Amazon and everybody, you need a lot of boxes to kind of for the shipping. So I think they're doing well, but this is just kind of, so they bought up the golf courses and made them good and got their Ryder Cups and their Kings for a Day. And that's how kind of Ireland, the internal courses work. Everywhere else it's owned by the members to a degree that funded them, bought lifetime memberships. And, a lot of good ones, and it's always green and a lot of picturesque, and particularly Tralee, it's an aerial game. It's half kind of, you can drive it, but the other half is all hills, and you better be on target, because otherwise you're going down to ravines, and if you can find your ball. And so being an amateur just starting out on that type of quality course was quite difficed for us.
That was brutal.
Especially with $1 a ball that we didn't have, and our mom was pretty stingent about money. We have to go find balls to play almost at the end of the day, which you would,
But still, it was difficult. It was a difficult course, and so a lot of them, like you say, in Ireland, you've got the ones with the trees, which are nice, kind of a little bit more inland, but you also have downsides there too, because they're probably right next to a farm, and then you've got flies the size of your fist flying around you too. So it's not the greatest experience from that standpoint, but it's definitely part of the culture over there, and the Americans love it. I don't know if that's still the case. The Americans fly over for golf outings the way they were maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but I'm sure there's a lot more other courses that you've hit. We can talk about those in the future.
No, absolutely great. And I mean, they used to come out, clear out the pro shop, and everybody was happy days because the pro shop was making money off these tours coming through. I mean, I play it on and off maybe once every 3 or 4 years, but right. I mean, when you have little kids, it's not a priority to play golf. And I'm not an athlete that gets 6 months off season to play every day like Tom Brady, So it's just like, yeah, you will get good. But the one thing I did notice when I played a few times where I had to rent the clubs is if you have a decent swing, which I do, the club does all the work now. It's freaking crazy. I mean, you can drive it pretty easily 250, 300 by just a nice smooth swing, and the club does all. Man, it's awesome. It's pretty cool.
Well, when we started, we actually started with woods. So we've seen the progression of the technology, even though we don't necessarily own the latest and the greatest, but it's gotten so much better over time. So it's, and I think that's on purpose too, right? To make it fun for, people who are hackers out there and they've got some money, invest like $1,000 in like a new set of clubs and then go play and take them to Florida.
They'll buy you a driver these days. It's crazy.
Okay, well, I'm out of it, so I don't
Yeah, I
know
think
what the
it's like
prices are.
$5K probably for a good set. No, I mean
Yikes.
when I was in college, I was working at a golf club, golf store, throughout winters and summers, and so I kind of was like, I'm going to buy my new set, my perfect set. So I got the ping irons, I got I got the biggest Big Bertha, which was like the biggest driver you've at that time. It was like, and I think you had the Big Bertha,
Yep.
and we had and it was like everybody's like, man, that's cheating, blah blah blah. And I like love these clubs, and I used them for like the next 10 or 15 years whenever I played. But as you see, like 3-4 years down the road, every driver was the size of the biggest Big Bertha, and then another 5 or 6 years, they were almost 1.5 times bigger than biggest Bertha. It was crazy, and like just almost boom, like a little tap, and the ball's flying. It's awesome. Like I was very impressed. Like I'm not. So my kind of thing was I was thinking like, oh, well, I buy a new set of clubs because I want to get the boys into it. But again, they're only 6 months and like 4, so they're not going to be getting anytime soon. But it's just like that's kind of the theory is like, oh yeah, I'll bring them out for a round on a Saturday, kind of burn some time and get back into it. But yeah, great golf courses in Ireland, and great golfers in Ireland, and all fair dues. And it's good to talk about this particular one since the guy's in the press, and it looks like it's a nice love triangle, and all the goods.
Yep. And there's plenty more golf still this season. So there's probably going to be more to talk about. And again, we haven't even talked about like the Irish Open, or maybe we'll come back and visit this in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, maybe the Ryder Cup, how they're doing with that road that they need for the Adair Manor, and we'll follow up and go from there.
Perfect. Well, Jay, thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. All you folks out there, thanks for listening and tuning in. You'll see over time here, we're doing some things differently. And now that, as you said, Jay, we've got our 25 under our belt here. So we're going to keep it consistent like this, but also start to experiment a little bit and see what you folks like, and we'll hopefully grow this channel. So please like and subscribe, and again, buy the book Hard Border, and we'll go from there. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you
soon.
All right, bye now.
Okay, bye-bye.